Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to Talent Culture's T-Chat Radio. The World of Work is live now on the radio with Megan M. Biro and Kevin W. Grossman, because middle initials count.
Come down, turn the radio on. Take my hand, turn the radio on. Come on, my favorite song, babe. Let's dance, turn the radio on.
Welcome, everybody out there in Talent Culture T-Chat Show land. It is Wednesday, November 4th. Mercy, how time flies. The year is almost done with us. And it's another great show we've got ahead of you. With you, as always, is Kevin W. Grossman and, of course, the lovely and talented Megan M. Biro. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, community. What's happening?
You know, I was just telling you before we got started that I went to the Achievers event Monday and yesterday, which was a great event in San Francisco, and we had rain on Monday morning, which was lovely. We need it so desperately here.
Oh,
but it's,
cool.
But it took me 3 hours and 15 minutes to drive from Santa Cruz to San Francisco. So that was, hey.
Yeah, that's.
But there you go.
Talk about lost productivity. Yikes.
Well, you know what I did though? You know what I did? I listened to my favorite podcast and I made phone calls. So there you go. That's all. What else can you do? What else can you do? Yeah.
There's nothing you can do. We're all trying to make sense of all this connectivity we have. I love it, and I'm the same. I was on a conference call with some partners just earlier today, and it was like we all had a gazillion numbers to call in on, and we're all like, can we just all get on the same page here? I mean, why is it taking us 10 minutes? Hey, shout out to all my friends and partners out there. So glad you're with us today. We're going to make sense of all of this, and we're going to be discussing how to make meetings worth everyone's time. So first, I just want to take a quick moment and give a shout out to all of the sponsors of the Talent Culture World of Work community: Dice and Smashfly, Career Builder, Workable, TalentWise, PeopleFluent, SmartSearch, iCIMS, Visier, IBM Smarter Workforce, and Jive. And thank you to our community itself, our bloggers, our participants that come, that are very loyal and join us every week here on the podcast and the Twitter chat. I appreciate each and every one of you. So let's dive into this. Last week we talked about how hiring managers can reduce the cost of hiring. And I'm a little bit on this trip right now of saving time, right, and productivity. So this week we're going to be talking about how to make meetings worth everyone's time. Meetings have been the bane of business since the beginning of time, right? Too many of us feel that meetings are a time waste. They're energy sapping. I think a lot of times we're having meetings for the sake of having meetings, and it's starting to feel useless. And it's endured at the expense of real work that needs to get done, and that's what kind of bothers me about it. So we've got some good news here. Meetings can be places where people do meaningful work. We make plans. We're going to reach decisions. We're going to make commitments. And hopefully we're all going to grow and develop, right, and kind of get everybody behind a task. Changing meetings from time wasting to time valued, from energy sapping to energy producing, requires a really different mindset to designing, leading, and contributing in meetings. So, hey, this means change, right? I'm up for it. Let's see if everybody else is today. It also means making new choices. So if you're listening, and I hope you are, and you want to participate in the Twitter chat either during this podcast or for the T-Chat, Twitter chat portion right after, come on over, utilize the hashtag on Twitter, T-Chat, and let's get this party started.
Indeed. So we've got two wonderful guests today, Dick and Emily Axelrod, the co-founders of the Axelrod Group, which is a consulting firm that pioneered the use of employee involvement to affect large-scale organizational change, and their clients include just some, little-known names like Boeing, Coca-Cola, and Novartis, and among many others. And their latest book is called Let's Stop Meeting Like This, Tools to Save Time and Get More Done. Welcome, Dick and Emily.
Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah. Yeah, so why don't we start? Let's do this. We always like to get a little bit more background from our guests directly, besides, of course, the bio information and everything that we read off. Why don't you both, each of you, tell us a little bit more about your backgrounds and what led you to founding the Axelrod Group? Why don't we start with Emily, you first?
Okay, well, I was a teacher, moved from being a teacher to going to social work school after I had a family. Decided I needed to learn more about family, became a family therapist. And while I was doing this, Dick decided that he wanted to start his own business. A little bit of terror there, but it worked out all right. And he can tell you his story.
Yeah, well, that was over 35 years ago when we started. So I started out in businesses. I was an internal consultant at General Foods and part of their pioneering work in self-directed work teams. I left there and became an external consultant. I also teach a course in crisis leadership at the University of Chicago, and together we've written a couple of books. So that's kind of who we are and how we got here.
And I also think meetings can really be fun and energetic. And I hate
You're kidding.
They can.
Well, then I want to hear more about this because I think I'm feeling like there's a giant headache right now. So there you go.
Well, they are for
How's
some
that?
people, you know.
How does that grab you?
And I think we're better. We got some ideas that are better than 2 Tylenol, or a drink. I don't know.
Hey, Dick and
There you
Emily, if I remember correctly, you first reached out to myself through my friend Jessie Lynn Stoner. Is that correct?
Right, that's right.
That's correct.
Yeah, we're good
Let's
friends.
give Jessie Lynn Stoner a special shout out today for introducing you guys to the Talent Culture T-Chat community. Thank you, Jessie. It's a small world out there, but Jessie's been a great friend of our community for many years, so we just wanted to give her a special hello today. All right,
Absolutely.
so let's dive into it. So meetings are a necessary evil, right?
Yep.
So what happened to meetings over time? Let's start with Dick and then move on to Emily. What's happened to meetings?
Well, I think
what's going on
is that, our organizations have become much more complex. And so the need to coordinate, the need to integrate knowledge, as Peter Drucker has said, no one person has all the knowledge to deal with the issues that we're facing. So there's a need to bring these different viewpoints, different sets of knowledge together in one place, and that's often in a meeting.
And what I would say is meetings have also become habitual. So at 9 o'clock Monday morning we meet. Well, if people don't know what the purpose is, if they don't know what their role is, things like this aren't clear, then they can sit there and chew the fat for an hour and then leave. So we have to get more purposeful about our meetings. Meetings are work, and we have to think about that. One of the things that we've been thinking about is that with knowledge workers, meetings are the factory floor. They're where a lot of work gets done, decisions get made, all of that kind of stuff. And if people can look at it like that, if they can be serious about their meetings instead of just meetings.
Putting in time.
Yeah. And be efficient, then that can really help move work along as opposed to what a lot of us have experienced of, as you say, meetings are evil.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, in addition to what Emily said, that makes meetings painful is they're usually, there's very little planning. They're called without planning. People's roles aren't clear. They leave not knowing what was decided or what was expected of them. And other than that, everything is fine.
Right, which makes no sense. I mean, it's great, except it makes no sense, right?
Right. Exactly. I mean, you stand in the hallway when you come out of a meeting and you say, well, I think I'm going to do X, and the person next to you said, no, I'm doing that job. So one of the things that we're, saying is let's get clear at the end of the meeting about who's doing what. I mean, it's just simple it's not difficult. This is not rocket science. This is basically planning for what we need to do.
And I think
another thing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say,
Who's on first?
Yeah.
What's on second?
You guys all right? You guys all right?
Everybody all right? How's our meeting going?
We're okay. I think one of the things that happens is that people put the whole responsibility for the success of the meeting on the leader. And that allows everybody to sit back and complain. And while that's convenient, it's hardly useful. Okay. So one of our things is that everybody has to take responsibility for the success or failure of a meeting.
Right. And another thing that we talked about before on the video preview, which we also experienced too, and this is indicative of modern age and technology today, is that making sure that all the stuff works, especially for your remote teams and individuals that are either dialing in or doing video calls or whatever the case is, making sure that all works before the meeting even gets started. Because how many of us, I know I can count countless number of times, of the first 15 minutes in the meeting are just getting everybody on, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think the technology becomes part of the planning in addition to the things like, the purpose and the agenda and who needs to be there.
Exactly.
Well, absolutely. So I have a burning question, Dick and Emily. I mean, is most of your work right now, when you talk about working with the big brands like Boeing and Coca-Cola and Novartis, and I'm going to assume you're working with all size brands, but it sounds like you're working with some pretty large ones. Is that what your focus is right now? I mean, is there so much need for this? Yeah.
Well, I think the way we see it, a lot of our work is around organizational change, and within any organizational change effort, there are just hundreds of meetings. Okay, and so we've been focusing on the meetings that make up any change management or cultural change or any other kind of
strategic planning, all of that.
Effort,
right.
And saying that a place to start is the way that we meet, because it's the decisions that get made in those meetings that influence the whole change process. And what's been happening is we focused on the kind of meetings that take place during a change process. People are saying, well, hey, we need to look at just our regular meetings that are going on outside of the change process. And we began to see that as a leverage or a place where we could really begin to shift the culture in a way that feels kind of under your control and easy to do, because it's a lot easier to think about changing the way you meet than changing the whole organization.
Right.
So I'm really fascinated on how brands are using video right now, whether it's to engage employees, to have meetings, to hire, right, to hire new talent.
Yeah.
Talk to me and the gang over here about the 5 elements of video games or video, right, either video or gaming or anything related to video that can transform meetings as places where everyone does productive work. And maybe give us some examples, some real-life case studies of brands that you're working with and how that's going.
Well, okay, let's take the video game piece. And what happened to Emily and I was we were doing a workshop on meetings, and the CEO...
This was in Scotland.
Yeah, we were in Scotland, and the CEO of a video game company came up after the presentation, and he said, the same things that you're talking about that make up good meetings, which are a sense of autonomy, that there's challenge, that there's meaning, that learning and feedback occur, are the same things that we think about when we design a video game. And so that really caught our attention, because in a video game you get autonomy by choosing the level at which you play. If the video game doesn't have some challenge in it, and there's a sweet spot here where it has to be above your current skill level but not too far, because if it's too far then you quit. If the game isn't worth playing, then people won't play it. All right? And if you don't learn anything as a result of playing the game, people stop playing it after a couple times. And in any video game, you get instantaneous feedback. So we began to think about what was interesting to us about those 5 things. Is they're the same 5 things that are present when you design engaging work. And so we began to think, if you think of meetings as work, as a work experience, then can we begin to put these 5 things into a video game?
Well, no, into meetings.
Or into meetings, I'm sorry.
You
Very
want
cool.
as you design your meetings, to do that. One of the things that we've done with this, we've run a couple of workshops in. One was in a big hospital system up in Canada around meetings, and this was a group that basically is working on all of their cancer treatment and work and things like that. So what we did was run a basic workshop on how they could just organize their meetings and how to redesign their meetings, and from that they've gotten a much greater productive meetings and are much happier with their ability to do that. And it's really simple in a way, because what we gave them was a structure and times when that's useful and times when, depending on the kind of meeting, what makes sense. And that it was as simple as that. The other question that we always ask people before we do anything about meetings is this meeting necessary?
Right.
That's the first question you ask. Is it really
Right.
necessary for us to get together and talk about? One of our clients at Boeing uses the two questions. One, we need to have a discussion and we need to make a decision. And that means that we need to have a meeting of some sort. So you need some guidelines on when do you need to meet. You don't just
but I would imagine that working with a brand as large as Boeing, and I mean, no offense to Boeing, but they're an old school brand. All right, I'm going to say it. All right, I'm going to be honest. I lived out in Seattle for a while, pretty familiar with that brand.
Right.
Now, are you having the same types of conversations with the Boeings of the world as you are, say, small to medium-sized organizations?
Oh, no.
Or are you guys basically just focused on large-scale organizations? I just want to clarify for our audience.
Well, not really, because we're also working with a paper mill. And, they're having those questions, and they're certainly not quite as large as Boeing. So,
okay.
I mean, I think this applies to two people having a conversation. This applies to nonprofits. Some of the worst meetings I've ever been in have been in nonprofits. In fact, one of the things that sent me back to work was in a parent-teacher organization sitting for 3 hours having people talk about the color of the tray in the cafeteria. And I just said, I quit. I got to go back to work. I can't take this.
Where she thought meetings would be better.
Yeah,
not only that,
it's
the pain of small talk. Like, I don't know about you guys. I'm not a real good small talker. I'm more of I want to kind of just I'm all business when it comes to meetings. And, it's like talking. I mean, and I do talk about the weather, okay, everybody. I'm guilty of it too. But, how do you get through all that the BS of, how's your day going? Mine's fine. All that. I mean, there's so much of that ingrained in our culture, isn't there?
Yeah.
Well, it's in some organizations there's too much, and in other organizations there's not enough. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So part
listen,
of what
Dick.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was going to jump into the next thing, but finish your thought.
Okay. Well, what we see, and we can get to this later, but most places don't pay enough attention to the beginning and don't pay enough attention to how they end their meetings. So if you do the right setup, you've created an atmosphere where work can be done, and you do a good conclusion, then you've got a place where you're clear on what you've agreed to in the next steps. But we can talk more about that later.
Well, actually, this relates to the next section as well, because we've already touched on a few of the items, but let's talk about habits, right? You already talked about the things that make really good meaning, but it's also a matter of getting in habit and doing something that's repeatable over and over again because happiness is relative to being productive and getting decisions made and getting work done, right? So why don't you share with us those habits that both help and hurt energy-producing, time-valued meetings that we've been talking in and around.
Okay, so let me say at the beginning, habits. You can have good habits and you can have bad habits. So there are habits that help you be more productive, and there are habits that get in the way. So I think part of the habits that get in the way is the question that Emily asked, is the meeting necessary? Being clear about purpose, planning ahead of time, making sure that you have the right people. It reminds me of how sometimes when you drive someplace and you don't know how you get there, well, I think that's how people begin to think about meetings. It's a routine that they don't put much thought and attention into, and because they don't do that, then the meeting tends to go nowhere. If you want to shift habits, what the neuroscience has taught us is that you don't erase bad habits. They stay there, but what you have to make is the new habits more conscious and stronger than the old habits. So,
sure.
So some of the work that we've been doing is saying, okay, let's create some habits about how we begin. Okay, do we say what the purpose is? Do we welcome the new people? Do we, those kinds of things? Do we put time limits on different parts of the agenda, which I think takes care of what Megan was saying before? Do we create connection between people?
Between people
right.
and to task.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
At the end of the meeting, do we review what the decisions that were made? Okay. Do we have a clear idea of what next steps were? Do we take a few minutes to say what made this meeting work well and what do we need to do better? So these become new behaviors that you need to keep reinforcing so that the quality, those habits become stronger than the non-planning, let's get out of here habits.
Us humans, huh? We're complex beings, right?
Right.
And
yeah.
get our
Very
humans
complex
into a
beings.
meeting with other humans, into a larger ecosystem that we call culture, and it can be, it's unbelievable what we do with our time. And I'm speaking from my own experience bringing people together for meetings as well, and Kevin will attest to this, because we have ongoing meetings around our events every week, right, Kevin? And, he's starting to say to me more and more, do we have an agenda for this? And I'm going, you know what? We've been able to, I would say in the last 2 to 3 months, take a lot of these meetings off the table, no pun intended, and really kind of become leaner and meaner in how we communicate. So I think all of us are struggling, whether you're, a small company or a large company or anywhere in between. We're all kind of, we're all dealing with this at the same time,
Yeah, our publisher, when we came up with this idea, our publishers, we think a really excellent publisher, Barrett Kohler. They took the idea to heart, put somebody in charge and examined all of their meetings to see whether they were necessary or not. They had a lot of complaints about a staff meeting that they had once a month for 3 hours, and so they made part of that meeting voluntary. And when they made it voluntary, even though people knew it was voluntary, some of them still continued to show up. So I think people need to just take a fresh look at it, to really look at their structure, to think, if you think about work, you plan your work. You don't just do it. You sit down, you have to have some sort of a plan. You have to have skills. And you have to think about meetings that way, because they are our work these days in a lot of times and places.
And in the structure that we give people is the kind of what we call the meeting canoe. So it's a different kind of meeting agenda, and it starts with how do you make people feel welcome in the meeting? How do you connect people to each other and to the task? How do we get a good idea of the current state or discover where things are? How do we elicit people's dreams, which means we're not asking you about what you dreamt last night, but what's the future we want to create? How are we going to decide? We make decisions, and then the last part is attend to the end. How do we close it down? So that's the framework that we're teaching and that our publisher followed when they were making their changes. And what they found was that they thought they did a pretty good job in most elements except for the ending. And so the CEO began asking people at the end of meetings, what was your experience here today? And he'd be in a meeting that he thought was great and then find out that it wasn't great from other people's perspective. So there's just some little simple things that you can do. And they're simple, but they're not simplistic. So they really begin to shift and make a difference in the way people meet.
All right, so I have to ask this question. What in the world is Meeting Canoe all about? and how can it be used to run productive meetings? What?
Okay.
Tell us more. We're curious.
Well, the meeting, because I have an engineering background, the meeting canoe started out as a three-dimensional cube. And the publisher
what?
didn't like that at all. And so I took it to our graphic designer, and he said, "When I know about your work, this cube doesn't represent what your work or what you're trying to talk about." So he came up with the canoe metaphor as a way of thinking about how people work together in a meeting, because in a canoe everybody has to pull together to get to where you want to go. So these 6 elements, okay, the front end of the canoe is the welcome and connection, okay. The middle part of the canoe is getting clear on where you are and what you want to accomplish in the future and decisions that you have to make. And then at the end of the canoe is attending to the end, so how we close. So it's
decide and attend.
Yeah, so it's a framework for how to put together a meeting that incorporates the other the things that we talked about before, the autonomy, feedback, learning, challenge, etc. So you put those two together and you've created a different type of agenda.
So Dick and Emily, we're down to just the last few minutes, but just real quick on that note, I'm just curious, how, just really quick and briefly, how do you get that change moving, though, to that canoe metaphor? Because you know how many, with frenetic organizations today, man, they're just going to immediately upend that thing, right? that canoe's going over, and these people are in the water. So how do you roll this out?
Okay. First of all, you get everybody in the group that's meeting to be involved in. They get the canoe right away, and then they actually design the agenda in each segment, and then you have to keep reinforcing it as you go on. So they have to keep looking at their meetings so that it's they're continually improving.
The feedback, Kevin, is a key thing. And if they screw up and they give the feedback, and they know, and if they want to do it, that's great. If they don't want, you can't make people want to do something. But if people desire to have better meetings, people that have taken it on have found that it really is helpful. The other thing about it is the beginning and the end seem to be the ones that we tend to not pay attention to most. So some people take on one piece of it to begin to get started as opposed to the whole thing at the same time. And that then begins to help them see that, maybe some of this is useful.
And if you really want to get you got to bring lots of meetings together, because if it's just one meeting you're trying to shift, the larger culture will probably kill it.
Well, hey, listen, I just want to thank you both for being with us. We're down to the last couple of minutes, so if you want to give a little plug-o to your book-o called Let's Stop Meeting Like This, Tools to Save Time and Get More Done. Tell us just what's going on. That's very exciting for you both. Congrats, and I know you've got a workshop coming up. Give us a scoop.
Well, the book is just a fun book, and it's the idea that we take you through the 6 elements of the meeting canoe. We take you through this idea of meetings as productive work, and then we talk about 3 roles: leaders, contributors, and participants, and how they can begin to work to create effective meetings. The workshop that we're doing November 20th at Sonoma State University in California is where people will come together, essentially bring their meeting into the workshop, and it's a hands-on session where we begin to work with people using these models so that they walk out of there with a new design for how they can run better meetings in their organization.
And really kind of get I think of it as a different philosophy. Instead of just meeting to have another meeting, it's really how do we be planful, how do we involve people so they'll be accountable. All of that goes into it, and how do we make sure that we need to really have a meeting? What are our guidelines for having a meeting?
Excellent. Thank you both again. Time for Twitter chat.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here, and let's take this conversation about meetings and canoes over to Twitter, where we've got a lot.
If you have a canoe, you can paddle it anywhere you want it to go.
There you go.
Let's
do it.
Absolutely.
Whatever.
Sky's the limit. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.